It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
Insiders Jim Meehan and Richard Fox bring you the latest games and standings for the Gonzaga Bulldogs on Gonzaga Basketball Insiders.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders podcast. I'm Jim Meehan of the Spokesman-Review, covered the Zags for 15 years. And with me is Richard Fox, television analyst for Zags basketball games on KHQ, SWX, and Root Sports. I'm down in Las Vegas where the Zags will play San Francisco in the WCC tournament semifinals tonight. Another late night game follows the St. Mary's BYU semifinal at 6. So tip will be about 8:45-ish is my guess. Richard, you're in Spokane. Another late night. You've got two young kids. Are you going to make it to the finish line tonight? Did you make it the other night when San Francisco and Santa Clara finished at 12:25 a.m.?
I did not. I just couldn't do that one. No, I'm looking forward to tonight. I think, we'll get into the game, but obviously Gonzaga is going to be heavily favored, I would imagine, but it could be interesting.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think both of them are going to be interesting because BYU, while I think they've had one of their worst records in the conference since joining, I think in 2011, 2012, they have played Gonzaga tough twice and St. Mary's tough twice. They've taken losses, but they're right there. So maybe they can break through at this tournament and get that long coveted title. They haven't won one in the regular season or the WCC tournament since joining. Rankings came out this morning. Gonzaga up to number 9. That's a high water mark. They were number 6 before they lost to Loyola Marymount. I think that was January 19th. That loss dropped them 8 spots, and they've been trying to climb ever since. In the net rankings, they are also, I believe, numbers 8, one behind St. Mary's. It's either 8-9 or 7-8. I can't remember which.
Right. Yeah. GU's 9, St. Mary's is 8.
There you go. And then so tournament projections now kind of have Gonzaga solidly on the 3 line. Depending on the region, one of them's in the Midwest, one of them's in the West Regional, but I think both of them have them opening round at Sacramento, which is about as close as they can get. Sacramento and Denver are the 2 closest sites. Still an opportunity perhaps to move up to the 2 line. I'm not sure, even if they were to win this tournament, beat St. Mary's again, not sure if they can get there, but I think they could still strengthen their spot on the 3 line and their chances of playing, as we mentioned, Denver or Sacramento closer to home. Well, let's go back through the week that was. We had the all WCC honors came out. What was that? Wednesday morning. And Drew Timme, Brandon Podziemski of Santa Clara shared the player of the year. Malachi Smith was the 6th man of the year. Anton Watson did not make the first or second teams. He was an honorable mention pick. We talked a week ago after the St. Mary's game that we kind of thought Anton had sealed his spot on the first team. That didn't happen. He also did not win the Defensive Player of the Year. That went to Logan Johnson of St. Mary's. Julian Strother joined Timme on the first team All-League. Foxy, my reaction, probably similar to yours. I was surprised it was co-player of the year. Not that Podziemski didn't have a great season. He did. He averaged almost 19 and 10, I think, as a 6'5" guard. Very impressive. But I just thought Drew's, body of work all season, how much they've relied on him, what he's done statistically. I still thought that should have been a solo award. And Anton not being among the top 15 players in the conference, I didn't understand that one either. What do you think?
Yeah, I was really surprised by both. To speak on Anton first, 3 Santa Clara Broncos made the all-league teams. They finished 3rd in the conference. I have a real tough time with the Watson exclusion. There's just not if we're looking at how the conference schedule played out on planet Earth, there's not 15 players that are A, better or B, more impactful to winning than Anton. I was just really disappointed with that. This stuff really matters to the guys that are hoping to be on these lists. There's a difference between, and I could speak to this. I played at Gonzaga. I wasn't an all-league guy at Gonzaga. There's something different about that. It means a lot, particularly as you kind of look back on your career. And so that just really bothered me. I didn't expect him. We talked last week. I didn't think he'd win all defensive team. Certainly, if there was an all defensive team, you would imagine he would be on it. But given the way the voting went, who knows? But I was just very disappointed for Anton. I think he had a great year. Those that follow the league. I'd be surprised if you found anybody in the media that would not have been surprised by his exclusion, put it that way. And then with respect to Drew, I agree with you. Podziemski had an incredible season. He's a very good player. Santa Clara was solidly the third best team in this league. They finished down the stretch well. They did not have a marquee win in conference. They did not beat either GU or Santa Clara. I'm sorry, or St. Mary's. Mm-hmm. He, as good as he is not to the level yet of Logan Johnson, Cam Shelton, or Drew Timme, where no matter what you do defensively, they're going to have an impact scoring the ball. Gonzaga, other teams found ways to slow him down if they needed to. And that's part of the evolution of being a player. He's only a sophomore. I was really surprised, certainly an all-league guy, certainly a guy who profiles like he could win it next year, given the fact that Drew should be leaving and there's intending to leave and Shelton's a senior, so on and so forth. Logan Johnson will be gone. This is really going to be his league next year. Only one of those two players will be an All-American, and that would be Drew Timme. So I was really surprised by that. I think it would be. I think it's really disappointing. And now I'm going to go off. I'm going to get on my soapbox here real quick. Please allow me. You constantly hear about accountability from coaches in any sport. You got to be accountable. Then publicize who you voted for. I do not understand the anonymity of it. And I also think it's indicative of, coaches should not be voting for these awards. Generally speaking, and there are going to be exceptions to this, generally speaking, these coaches are focused on their team and the team in front of them, which means they may watch some film on Podziemski going into a game, and then they see Podziemski live twice. They are not watching 30, 40, 45 games a year of just the league generally to really put together, in my opinion, enough of a sense of who's done it consistently throughout the year in an impactful way to be voting. And I think the way this voting played out is pretty supports that idea that maybe the conference, and not just WCC, but all conferences generally, should have a media component of it. I don't know how many games you watched during the course of the year that aren't GU related or aren't GU games, but I watched quite a few. And I'm not asking for a vote. I don't watch enough. But I think of guys like you. I think of guys like Dickow, who obviously does a lot of non-Gonzaga games. They're going to put together a list of players on those all-conference teams that is more indicative of what it should look like, in my opinion, than what these coaches are doing. And I think this year is, exhibit A of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I like the idea of disclosing their votes. That would be really cool to see how that came down, that, Drew and Podziemski tied for player of the year. I'd love to see what Anton pulled for votes. I'm still not believing. You cannot convince me he's not in the top 15 in this league. And you can't.
There's nobody that can convince you of that, Jim, because it's not true. He is one of the 15 best players in the league.
I'll go further. They can't convince me he's not in the top 10. So we'll leave it at that.
I agree. Yeah.
We'll leave it at that and move on here to the one game the Zags played last week. Was a regular season finale. They stepped out of conference to play Chicago State. As expected, they routed the Cougars 104-65. 7 players in double figures. Just kind of, I was actually, impressed with Chicago State. They have some physical guys. They're undersized, but they're very mature, physical guys that battled like crazy throughout. Actually, at the end of the first half, got it within 10 or 11 before Gonzaga pulled away in the second half. But I think it was kind of what the Zags were hoping for. Get a game that wasn't too high stressful, could get some guys off their feet and on the bench and get them ready for Vegas and the tournament. And that's kind of how it played out Wednesday night.
Yeah, it's exactly what the reason they scheduled it, right? I mean, I agree with you. I thought Chicago State had a little bit more fight in them than I was expecting, particularly early. But, you always want to appreciate the fact there's a lot of emotion going into those games. And, the seniors, those 4 guys accounted for about 54% of the points. They all had their moments. Gonzaga shot the ball well. I thought it wasn't a game that was really sloppy or, you didn't take a step back with the form that you've been in. But I thought it was, like what most things Gonzaga does, it was well done. You had the opportunity to acknowledge those guys before the game. And I thought Mark had the ability to get those guys off the floor, likely in the way that he would have wanted going into it. So a good night all the way around. Kind of always a weird deal when it's the last game of the season at home. But I think all in all, a big success.
Yeah, the senior night speeches were kind of short and sweet. Gonzaga actually made all 4 seniors available in the post-game media conference. And I asked them all. Drew's made it clear he's going to move on. He's done his 4 years, as I think is how he worded it. And Rozier is out of eligibility. There's no COVID year, extra year. He used that this year. So, but the other 2 are more interesting. Malachi Smith, we talked about last week, is a redshirt junior on the roster. And I was told that it's that way because he does have 2 years of eligibility. So he could come back next year. And he probably would step into a pretty prominent role if he did next year I'm sure as a starting guard and a 30-minute a game type of guy. I think if he got 30 minutes a game, he'd be in that 13, 14 point range this year. And the other interesting one is Anton Watson. He said he hasn't decided to us what he's going to do, but with how he is, he's getting some airtime now on these commercials with Northwest Specialty Hospitals and the pizza joint, and you see him quite a bit now. And I'm kind of wondering if they're, as it was with Drew a year ago, if that NIL money, with the opportunity of coming back and being kind of a marquee guy, if he were to come back, I wonder if that's enough to bring him back. When I watched your guys' replay of the game, it sounded like, I believe it was Heister was talking about that Watson's probably not coming back. I'm not sure if that's right or not. Maybe he's got more inside info than I do, but he's the one that those 2, Smith and Watson, are intriguing to me. What do you think on those 2 guys?
I don't disagree. I think it's there's a lot of season left, but if fans want to go through the process of thinking who's coming back next year, there's a lot that's leaving, just in the way of production, but also bodies. I mean, it's the nature of major college sports now, particularly basketball. There's just so much turnover. It's not just Drew and Rozier who are gone, but what does the bottom half of the roster look like? Do guys going to stick it out and stay and try to carve out a larger role, or are they going to move on and find somewhere where they can play right away and have some certainty? You expect Hickman, Salas, and Greg to be locks to come back, and then after that, it's very much a game of what could this roster look like. And I don't disagree. I've been incredibly impressed with Smith all season. It's difficult. I don't know, the transition that he's had from Chattanooga to GU has not been as seamless as, say, Rozier's transition. I mean, Bolton was literally a plug-and-play guy, about as good as they've ever had. I think of guys like Woolridge and Admon Gilder. I'm sure I'm missing, one or two others. Wesley Matthews. I mean, there have been guys that have come in. I think his transition was a bit more complicated. But when you look at, particularly in conference, what he's done, he's the most efficient guard they have scoring the ball. I love his size. I think, defensively, he brings an element these other guys don't. And you're absolutely right. If he comes back, I would expect the ball to be in his hands more than anybody else that's on the roster today. And I know Hickman has started at point guard all year. And then with respect to Watson, that's a tough one. It's 4 years in college. He's a hometown kid. Who knows what the emotional dynamic is there? Does he want just to go do something else? Get out of Spokane, have a different life experience. Certainly, if he comes back, he's going to be the face of the program. That's going to be, I would imagine, a pretty unique experience and something that I would imagine back in the day he thought of wanting to have. So, but who knows, Jim, right? I mean, is Strother coming back? I would presume no, right? I mean, I think he's
question.
Probably,
yeah.
My guess is he's probably played his way in at minimum a fringe first-round pick, how he's played down the stretch and all the things he brings. So what I hope happens, though, the last thing I'd say is I hope it doesn't drag on until the last minute. We saw that with Drew and Julian last year. I don't know what the benefit of that is. I think these kids know like what they want to do. And I do know from this is going to be a very important offseason for this program. And I think having as much certainty as early on as possible for this staff is going to be critical because they're going to have to fill this team up with transfers. I know we've got some freshmen coming in, and Huff was basically redshirted this year, but they don't have a lot of experience coming back. They need to go get that experience, and so they need to know pretty quick, if they can, what Smith and Watson want to do.
And Julian, you're right, is a huge question because he comes back and he's automatically in the All-American discussion, Player of the Year discussion. Yeah. He's that good that he might have, he tested the waters last year. I would at least expect Anton to test the waters this year at the very least, if not move on. And I would also project Anton to slide into Drew's role in the Northern Quest commercials seamlessly if he does come back. That seems like a no-brainer to me. But
I would agree.
Let's go on to, I wrote about this last week. I was a little surprised when I kind of went through the numbers back 4 or 5 decades. Drew Timme's assist numbers. I think he's at 3.1 or 3.2 right now for the season. 2.8 last year, 2.3 the year before. He's got 304 career assists. He's, who knows how many games they got left. Let's say they play 3 or 4 more. He would finish just outside the top 10 at Gonzaga with all those great guards that they've had through the years. I think Stephen Gray's at 339. He's 10th, which is just mind-boggling for a 6'10" guy who scores as often as he scores. I think he has the highest per-game average since there's a guy named Jim Grady in 77 or 78. That's the last one that I think he was at 4.0 that had, and I'm talking about bigs, obviously, and not wings. Adam Morrison was a wing.
Right.
Corey Kispert was a wing. And some of the 6'6", 6'7" guys who played 4 men were undersized 4 guys, in the 90s. Even that's different. But none of them averaged anywhere close to what Drew did. Kind of blew my mind. Just not only his impact on the point total, but with assists. There's just hasn't been a guy like him at this school that I can recall.
No, I trying to think about who at that position, a true front court player who has had to who comes closest to carrying the load offensively that Drew's had to carry this year. The only name I've been able to think of is Kyle Wiltshire that one year where he just had to score the ball like crazy. But Kyle was very much just a scorer in the mold of Adam Morrison, right? It was not – you weren't playing through him so much as you were trying to, create opportunities for him to get the ball in his spot so you just go to work. They've run so much of their offense through Drew. They draw so much attention And it's been, he's always been able to score, always been able to do it efficiently. He's been pretty much the same level of rebounder his whole time since he's been here. That's been the one area that you can clearly look at on the offensive side of the ball where he has gotten better every year. And that is his feel for passing the ball out of the double team, his feel to make plays in open space. It's really remarkable. And to take it a step further, whatever list of guys in this modern era, right, since in the initial run, if you're putting a list together of who had the highest burden offensively, if Drew's not at the list, I mean, he's not any further down than 2 or 3. I mean, he just has to do so much on that end. It's really remarkable.
Yeah, and I think it shows. I asked him about it after one of the games and how their scoring balance is catching up. You've got Julian, you've got Anton, you got Malachi. Regier is now, I think, around 11 points a game, and he just kind of showed his willingness to do whatever it takes. He said he loves it. It's in theory, it's great to try to score 40 every night, but it's never going to happen. And they're so much better off when they've got all these multiple scoring threats and guys willing to share it. And that includes Anton Watson. He's at 2.3 assists, which is one of the highest totals in that stretch of years that I talked about. So I think just shows the numbers don't really mean everything to Drew. And I'm talking scoring numbers. He takes pretty good pride in doing the right play at the right time. And if that's a pass, he does it. If that's a spin move in a bucket, he does it. So credit to him. He's trying to, I think he's making one last push here for something special in March. And I think the way they're playing now, if they get their defense to catch up even more, I think it bodes well for them. But we'll see. They've got to do it on the court. Now let's move ahead to the court tonight. Gonzaga, San Francisco, semifinal. Zags win the 2 regular season games. The one known as the Regier Bolton takeover game. I think he had 11 of his 21 in the final 5 minutes. He had that putback that kind of sealed the deal right at the end. People forget him and Drew, I think, combined for 24 points when GU rolled over San Francisco in the McCarthy. So San Francisco gets to the semis by beating Pacific and Santa Clara. 2 overtime thriller. Khalil Shabazz, 38 points in that game. Tyrell Roberts, 16. They kind of just outlasted the Broncos. And I think Podziemski had a great regulation. He was great. Overtime, I think they finally kind of reined him in, even towards the end of regulation, and made a big difference as the Dons won that game. They've played 2 games, got a day off. I imagine they'll be semi-fresh. Zags just the opposite. They played Wednesday and have had a long break. What do you expect when that ball goes up tonight?
Well, it's a tale of 2 teams that are really different. San Francisco's issue all year has been consistency. I mean, they'll put a game together where they put it all together. They rebound the ball, they take care of the ball. But, looking back on the last 10 games of the regular season, I mean, this is a USF team with a negative turnover margin. They are a bad rebounding team. 4 games in of those 10, they've lost the battle of the glass by more than 10, including a couple of times by 16. But it's kind of feast or famine for them on 3. Last 10 games of the year, they're shooting about 47% of their shots from 3. That jives with what we've seen in the tournament so far, where they're almost at 50. They're undersized with Roberts and Shabazz, but those 2 guys, if they get going, they are difficult to deal with. So, in Gonzaga, on the other hand, is shooting about 32% of their shots from 3. And that makes sense, right? You've got Drew and obviously Anton. Those 2 guys dominate the inside. And Gonzaga has been really good with the ball. Last 7 games, they're averaging just about 8 turnovers a game, while over the last 10, they're averaging 16 assists. They've been so much better with the ball going down the stretch here. So, the questions I have are, can USF compete on the glass? They've been great in the two games, plus 12. That's not been what they've done in conference play. Can they take care of the ball? They've not done that in the tournament so far. They've got that negative assisted turnover ratio continues for them. And then I think Gonzaga, can you limit their effectiveness from three? And if you continue to take care of the ball, you're going to get the shots you want. So I think it's just the truth lies somewhere in the middle, and Gonzaga's probably going to win that. But USF had such a great game plan down at their place and played so well, almost pitched a perfect game, and just let it slip through their fingers there the last couple minutes. And then obviously up in the kennel, just no chance at all. It's hard to beat Gonzaga once, let alone twice. But that group will be rested. We talked about it last week. There's a freedom to not having the pressure. If you're USF, you might have some hopes of getting into the CBI or something like that, but this is it. So let's go out there and just let it fly. If this is Shabazz's last game, he's going to take a lot of shots. It'll be interesting to see. And he's one of the few guys, Jim. He and Shelton, within the league, in my opinion, are the most capable of really punishing Gonzaga in the pick and roll and putting Timmy on an island, especially. Now, Gonzaga, I think after that LMU game, made some real adjustments in their pick and roll coverage where Drew, if we're using Drew as an example, the hedge is early, it's aggressive. He's trying to push the ball handler to the half court, and he's waiting, holding that until the primary defender can get back. They're just not going to switch that. They really got away from just that automatic switch, which has been smart. Can USF find a way to force that switch? If they can, I think they're going to have some success with that. But I'm expecting it to be a good game.
Yeah, me too. I think the Dons will bring it. I think they're still a little irritated that they gave that game away, that Kyle Bankhead, your former teammate, is now assistant at San Francisco, put that game plan together, the one that works so well down in San Francisco. I think it comes down to two things, which you touched on. Can the Zags deal with Roberts and Shabazz? They don't have to shut them down. They're not going to shut them down. But if they can keep their shooting percentages down and their point totals to a reasonable number, that San Fran might not have the options elsewhere to hurt them. And from San Francisco's end, can they deal with Timmy and Watson? Can they keep their numbers down to give them a chance in this game? That's the two matchups that I see. But I do expect a freewheeling San Francisco team tonight, and we'll see how the Zags respond to that. That hard hedge you mentioned on the high pick and rolls has really been a lot more effective, steering the ball handler away from the hoop, oftentimes getting the ball out of his hands right there, or quickly thereafter, after that momentum has stopped. So that has been a big change and a successful one for Gonzaga's defense. Let's talk real quick on St. Mary's BYU. As I mentioned, BYU gives everybody a close game. Haven't always pulled it out at the end. They, like USF, kind of have a motivation here because they had St. Mary's beat in Provo, and Aiden Mahaney hits a step back Dirk Nowitzki fall away that wins the game for St. Mary's there. BYU is an interesting team right now. They are physical. They're always physical, but they're really physical now. And they guard, and they get on it on the glass, on the offensive end and defensive end, play a bunch of guys. I think they're going to give St. Mary's fits tonight. Would not be totally shocked if they didn't pull it off. But I just think their style of play is going to be a tough one to deal with for anybody who they face if they advance or not. What's your take on that matchup?
Yeah, I mean, BYU's been just so confusing all year. I mean, they finished the season losing 4 or 5. I mean, that includes a road game at Pepperdine, and then losing to Santa Clara. Now, part of that run was Gonzaga and St. Mary's, but they've 1 point loss at home to Gonzaga, 1 point loss at home to St. Mary's. This is a talented group. probably the most physical team in the league on balance. I know certainly has a lot of physicality to them, but just across the board, it's just an interesting dynamic. I'd be interested, how much of this being the last year in the league matters to them. Hey, let's make some noise. If it's motivating at all for them, or if it's just kind of something that's in the background. It's going to be it's difficult to beat teams 3 times, and we've heard Mark Few say this how many years now, especially around this time of year once you get to the tournament.
24.
I don't care if he's
exact answer.
I don't care if they were playing Pepperdine tonight or Portland. It would be, oh no, it's so hard to beat these teams. These are good teams. Well, in this case, it's true. BYU is good, and they have some top shelf talent for the level of this league. And the thing about St. Mary's in particular is they just don't score it enough. And if BYU gets going offensively and can get a cushion, I do think they guard well enough that they might be able to pull out the upset.
Yeah, and I think they'll have a little edge in the crowd size at the arena tonight. Heck, they might even pull some Zag fans onto their side if they were to get ahead of St. Mary's. But deep down, I'm not going to lie, I want to see Gonzaga St. Mary's Volume 3.
Me too.
Tuesday night, but they both got work tonight. Those will not be easy games for either team, is my guess. We'll wrap it up with one more. Best teams you've seen, either from your couch or in person, in the NCAA this season. I've seen most of the top 10 because the Zags have played them, and I'm going with Tennessee. I know they're struggling right now. I still think they've got the type of team, if they can just score it, if they can just hit shots, that they're going to be very tough to beat in the tournament. And Texas was outstanding that night in Austin. Could have beat the Zags by 25 or 30 if they probably wanted to. They were that good. Balance, both ends of the floor they play. They've got some size. They've got great skill, great guards. Love Timmy Allen as a kind of a mid-range, get it inside, drive it, pull up, whatever. 3-man. I think they can make some noise. Even with the coaching change, they're still playing great basketball. The one team not as high on and has all the better rankings and net rankings and all that is Alabama. They were number 1 for a while. They're still way up on the seed lines and in the net rankings. I'm just not sure. I mean, it's a very talented team. I guess haven't seen them give up 100 to the Zags. That's kind of stuck in my mind. So I put them below those others. Xavier, if that big kid had stayed healthy, Fremantle, I think he's out for the year. I think they could make a deep run, but without him, they're a little bit different too. So Kentucky's rebounded. I think they're about what they are, a top 25 team, but I'm going Tennessee, Texas as the 2 teams I've seen that look the best. Who do you got?
I was worried, Jim, you weren't going to leave anybody for me there, buddy. You were going through the whole field.
Well, that's all the Zags played. That schedule, they matched up.
Oh, there's a lot of good teams. I watched the Houston-Memphis game. That was yesterday, and you don't want to play Houston. The way they guard, they are so physical. Oh man, that's just an unpleasant experience. The minute you're playing them, you're just waiting. You just know it's just going to suck. And the one thing they do is they guard like crazy. They rebound. They don't have. They're not rolling out with 3-footers, but all their guys are big. Their guards are big, even if they're short. Their big guys are all thick and athletic, and they just don't care. And they've been in a lot of pressure situations. This group, they've got a lot of guys who've been together now 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. And Sampson knows how to coach. He does. And this, we know that up here in the Northwest. I played again when I was in Colorado. He was at Oklahoma. His teams are always well organized. They defend. And they rebound the ball. I wouldn't want to play them. I think the question is, do they shoot it well enough? But when you rebound and defend the way that they do, absorbing an off night from the perimeter is a lot easier. And then, I think Purdue, I know the Big Ten has not had the run in the tournament over the last few years that certainly supports how well they do in the regular season. But look, Zach Edey is kind of a unicorn in college. He's not first, and he's not going to be the first pick in the draft. He's not Wembanyama over in France, but he's 7'4". He's skilled, and he's just different. And they really know how to play with him. I think it's one thing to be in the Big Ten where I'm seeing him twice this season, or I've been in the league now for 2 years and I've played him before. So I'm somewhat adjusted or acclimated to that experience, and we know how to defend him or how to make his life more difficult. But in a one-off environment where I've never been physically next to this guy, I've never guarded a guy with this size and skill. I think the Purdue's been well set up to make a run, and I like the depth they have around them, both inside. I mean, their other front court players are all quality, and they shoot it well enough. They're big on the perimeter. And I think that's been, oddly enough, this is my perception of the Big Ten. They get to the tournament, they just can't guard the same level as, say, the Big 12, where you've got more athletes at the Big 12 level. The Big Ten, I think, can sometimes get exposed for not having top shelf athletes. With Edey in the middle, he cleans up a lot of that in a way that you just don't usually see. So those are the two teams I think I'd call. I'm not going on a big limb here. I mean, those two teams are in the top 5. UCLA and Arizona are obviously kind of interesting, but you could pick any of the top 6 in the Big 12 and probably make a strong case that team is good enough to win it all.
Yeah. I'm not as sold on Purdue. I love Edey. He was too much for the Zags that day in Portland. Just not sold on him totally. Same with Alabama. And of course, by saying that, they'll make deep runs. I'll be wrong. I'm not betting on it. Let's put it that way in Vegas. I'm not doing that. And that's going to do it for today's podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever you find your podcast, those for sure. Spokesman.com, our newspaper website. Click on the Zags icon. You can find us there on all our Gonzaga coverage. Until next Monday, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in a week.